Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Skyrocket Your Results with Organic and Paid Search Harmony, presented by Athena and Search Engine Land. Before we begin, we have just a few viewing tips for you. If you have any audio issues, go ahead and click the audio icon on your screen to enable your audio. And if you have any viewing issues, you can use the Q&A section to communicate with us. You can also send questions and comments directly to the speaker about his presentation at any time. Joining us today is Gary Galloway, Global Product Marketing Manager at Athena. Welcome back, Gary. It's great to see you, and I will turn things over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Cynthia. As always, it's great to see you, and it's great to be back. And thank you for everybody who is watching this live. Those who couldn't make it live and you're watching the recording, thanks for taking some time out of your day. Please reach out. We are living and working in a very fast evolving space. And I like to be challenged and ask questions and be pushed with new information because I certainly don't know everything. But yeah, a quick intro with me. I've worked for about 15 years in the digital marketing space, really around the common theme of helping brands navigate search complexities. A lot of the brands are global brands, and they have global campaigns running, national campaigns running, local campaigns running, and really navigating that complexity around digital marketing with all the different tactics has been really interesting to work. I've also had the good fortune to create a digital marketing class, and I taught that at the UNC, University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill for 5 semesters before COVID happened. And then during COVID, I started teaching it through the University of South Florida in Tampa in a virtual type setting. So looking forward to digging in a little bit today. I just told you a little bit about me. Let me tell you about Athena. If you haven't heard of Athena, we are a search intelligence company. What we really do is help brands, marketers, and agencies dominate their competitive landscape. And without search intelligence, what we're really doing is tapping into all the high intent signals that are coming across Google search. I think the last time I checked, there's 103,000 Google searches happening in the world every second. So that is a lot of intent signals. So what Athena does is we index the first page of the Google search results in 20 different locations around the world. And without search intelligence, we've found that your cost increase, your return on investment goes down, and it's really just difficult to deliver to the overarching business objectives without search intelligence. So Athena serves a bunch of different industries that you can see here listed at the top: retail, finance, technology, automotive, and you can see a lot of the global brands that we work with. We also have a huge agency presence and agency relationship with a lot of global agencies who are really helping their customers dominate their competitive landscape. So that's enough about me, enough about Athena. Before I get into the meat of the webinar, I just always like to take a quick pause on the domain, and also just checking out the macroeconomic conditions of the world that we live in. So obviously we're living in a tough macroeconomic time with inflation. Unfortunately, the war in the Ukraine is still going on. Every day we're looking at the stock market, if it's going up or if it's going down. It seems like it's swinging 5% each way. Also, unfortunately, there's a lot of tech layoffs earlier this year in the summer, and those seem to be continuing. But really, the takeaway here is search is, to me, it's the big reason I work at Athena and work in search. It's a very stable and very growing industry. It's a very growing domain and tactic that you use for your digital marketing strategy. So Google is really doing quite well. Just kind of looking at their revenue from their last quarter, their earnings are up. And one of the things that we're paying attention to with Google is all the automations that are happening. And I've got a Tiger team at Athena really investigating and putting together recommendations for the Google automations. Google's an amazing company, and we always think of Google plus Athena. How can we complement what Google's doing, how can we provide more insights and that sort of thing. So one of the things I like to look at is Performance Max and see how much of our customers are adopting it. And I did a survey back at the beginning of summer, and 71% of our customers are running Performance Max. 36% said performance is somewhat worse. And one of the interesting things about the survey that we did, we sent it out to over 100 of our customers. A lot of the Athena customers are enterprise global clients, so they're spending over $250,000 a month in paid search. And you can kind of get a sense of who's implemented Performance Max. 66% said yes. How would you characterize Performance Max? And these are really interesting slides, but one of the key takeaways was we simply just asked an open-ended question. How satisfied are you with Performance Max? And the takeaway here is simply lack of reporting and lack of control were the two things that really emerged from that open-ended question. You can see some of the other responses coming in. So one of the things that Athena does is we do provide strategic insights through reporting and really help our brands, marketers, and agencies get a holistic view of their competitive landscape. So what we're going to do now is, because webinars, I like for them to be interactive, I just want to simply poll the audience who's attending live. Have you implemented Google Performance Max? Simply say yes or no, and then I will hopefully get the results of the survey as they come in. And the survey results are starting to come in. And we asked this question, like I mentioned, about 7 months ago on a webinar similar to this. And 44% of people said they have not implemented Performance Max. So the results are starting to come in, and it looks like 65% of people have not implemented Google Performance Max. And that's very interesting to me. And I wish this were a two-way street so I could start asking questions to people about why they haven't implemented Performance Max. One of the things I meant to say as I was doing the intro is I love doing these webinars. I also love speaking in person where I do have interactions and questions. So if you do have questions, we certainly have a Q&A at the end of the webinar, but please feel free to use the chat window and pop in your question as we go. I will stop and answer the questions as they come in. They're usually relevant to one of the sections. So the poll is closing. 64% have said, no, we have not implemented it. Thank you for taking the time to answer that. So with all that being said about Google, what does this really mean? A lot of people are scrutinizing spend for their advertising, for their marketing. It's usually one of the top two biggest expenses for a company. Really need to start thinking about clear attribution to the business objectives. I know this has been a topic that's been happening for 15 years, measuring return on investment, measuring your ROAS. And it's no longer a soundbite. It's something that really needs to happen. And a lot of people are holding their digital marketing departments accountable for that. I want to take a sip of water, excuse me. So all that being said, takeaway here is don't worry, we're in this together. You're certainly not alone. Athena has over 300 enterprise advertisers, and we've seen a lot of recent successes with them. One brand, a global brand, reduced their cost per click by 35%. We're seeing a lot of people implement technology through API connections and data visualizations. So it's really interesting, and I'll highlight some of those things as we go along. So the meat of this webinar, 3 ways to skyrocket your results through organic and paid search harmony. Why don't we? That's a Lionel Richie shout out for those of you who are seasoned enough to know who Lionel Richie is. If you're not, certainly ask your parents and they'll be able to tell you. But the 3 things I want to talk about: save immediate budgets from brand search terms, tips to dominate product categories, and then finally, adapt new search term opportunities so you can scale your content strategy. So let's jump into the first section, saving immediate budgets from paid search. So one of the things that we do at Athena is really look at the synergies, the harmonies whatever fun word you want to use, between paid search and organic. You are all seasoned veterans here, or seasoned experts in this space. So you probably know cold that the click-through rate of this number one organic position is around 30%. The average click-through rate of paid search is around 2%. So what we're really thinking about is brand terms, when you're bidding on those brand terms, and when you have the number one organic position. So yes, I just saw a good question that came in. Will we get a copy of this deck so we don't have to write everything down? Definitely. I've got Nate, who's on my team, backstage, so he'll be answering some of those questions in the chat. But yes, you'll certainly be getting a copy of this deck and also the recording, so you can go back and listen to my velvety smooth voice. So don't worry about writing everything down. But we did some internal research looking at all of our customers, and 65% of Athena customers could save immediately if they simply paid attention to what we call Lone Rangers. Lone Rangers are those branded terms in which you are the sole bidder and you have the top organic position. One of our customers could save $2 million in annual savings if they simply paid attention to those Lone Rangers. Todd's cutting up, saying you could be on the radio. Please, I definitely have a face for radio. Thanks, Todd. So here we go. We have one of our customers. It's called Avanti West, and for those of you that don't know, I'm based in North Carolina in the U.S. Athena is a global company with offices in London, Sydney, and in Austin, Texas. And Avanti West is a UK train operator, and it's a pretty phenomenal story. They used Lone Ranger report from Athena and really identified all those terms in which they had the top organic position and they were the sole bidder. So they were able to come up with 32% savings each month. And this was during a global pandemic when demand for travel, demand for leaving your house was a major challenge on the table. So they were able to identify those terms that they didn't really need to be bidding on and reduce their they got 32% savings each month. And then they put those savings into generic terms. They identified key routes that they wanted to dominate, and they did, and they increased their revenue by 13% while reducing their paid search spend during a global pandemic. So it's super cool what they were able to do. And Lone Ranger report is something that we gave to Avanti West, and they went into their Google Ads campaign. They turned off those brand terms, reallocated those generic terms in their Google Ads. So it was a lot of manual work. So we thought to ourselves, what can we do to really automate this process? So we have built technology, and we launched it 2 weeks ago, and it's called Brand Activator. And essentially what Brand Activator is going to do is going to identify those Lone Ranger terms. Remember, Lone Ranger terms are those brand terms where you're the sole bidder and you have the top organic position. So we have two purposes for Brand Activator: to help you save budget by really just getting rid of those unnecessary paid brand clicks. And then you can also put a growth strategy in place. And as I mentioned, 67% of our customers have immediate savings when they use Brand Activator. And how Brand Activator works, because I know this is the next question, this is a very high-level 5-step process of how it works. Is we basically have an automated script that's linked to your Google Ads account. And then we have a targeted list of those brand terms. And we monitor those brand terms on an hourly basis. And we add or remove those brand terms on an hourly basis in your Google Ads account. So again, you can choose savings or you can choose growth, where you intentionally want to have the paid position and the organic position. And then we calculate the monthly savings. The savings report looks like this, and this is a little bit small, but it's a generic savings report. The green lines represent when you're not showing up in that brand term or in that brand bidding. And then the white line shows you where you are. So the green represents the savings. And in this example, it's $234,000 in savings for this month. And again, this is a mocked up savings report, but we have as I mentioned, a lot of brand global clients who are saving a significant amount of money by simply paying attention to those brand terms and to those Lone Rangers. So I hope I've explained Lone Rangers enough times. I've tried to hit it 3 times. That's my magic frequency. But the takeaway for section 1 is really to check out and embrace all the available data that you have. Identify those brand terms when you're the sole bidder and you have the organic top spot. Again, Lone Rangers is how we categorize that situation. And then start automating, turning on and off your Lone Rangers. So I'm going to take another little pause, and hopefully I explained Lone Rangers well enough for you to answer this next poll question. I really just want to get a sense of if you do monitor Lone Rangers, and if you do, what is the frequency? Do you do it hourly, daily, weekly, monthly? Not at all, because I just heard about this term Lone Rangers. So let's give people a minute to click on one of those radio buttons and hit submit, and the results will start coming in. I need some Jeopardy music here. I'm not going to hum it because that would probably run off a lot of people. So we have people who are 55% are saying not at all. 2% are saying hourly. That's cool. Daily, it looks like a majority of you are not monitoring Lone Rangers. So that's interesting insight. We'll give it one more second to populate. Not at all is up to 58%. So that is very interesting. I appreciate you taking the time to submit that. Very good. Thank you for that. So let's hop into section 2, tips to dominating your product categories. And what we're doing here is really talking about organic and paid. So when you work consistently on your SEO and you improve your overall ranking, you can obviously scale back on paid campaigns. A lot of times these teams are siloed. You have an SEO team, you have a paid team, they might sit on separate floors. But really thinking about these two things together and complete harmony is the way to go to cost savings. Again, just a reminder, the click-through rate of that top organic position is around 30%. And the average click-through rate for the paid ads is 2%. So it's a bigger, much bigger click-through rate. And this is especially true when specific terms rank high on search results. It really does give you that opportunity to double down on them and take up more of the search engine result page real estate using paid search when you need to do that. So let me click over to the next slide. So the second thing with dominating product categories is really paying attention to your competition. Again, Athena helps brands, marketers, and agencies navigate and dominate their competitive landscape. So when it comes to search, every business's desire is to get found before their competitors. That's an obvious statement. Thank you, Captain Obvious. But an emphasis on SEO really can help you ensure that you're creating material that informs and draws in that target audience. So after all, our research at Athena shows that consumers are 130% more likely to buy after reading educational content that they found online. So paid search can give your brand a boost in consumers' consideration set as they research and really compare those options. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a lag here. The next thing I want to talk about, and I want to bring in a real world example around campaign optimization and really optimizing your campaign based on business objectives. That's really the whole point of advertising, of marketing, is to have a marketing strategy. You support that strategy with different tactics like paid search, like social, but really you're trying to drive some sort of business objective. And I want to talk to you a little bit about a case study that we wrote on L'Oreal. And it's a really interesting scenario. So what L'Oreal was trying to do, they have about 40 or 50 different brands, and they were looking at Armani Beauty, and they wanted to grow their total market share during the key holiday gifting period in November and December. So their goal was to really better understand the impact on market share with an altered bidding approach. So they really wanted to optimize their shopping ads for visibility instead of return on ad spend. So they were doing automated bidding on ROAS, and they flipped it over to impression share. They were using auction insights, and as some of you probably have, you probably use auction insights on a daily basis. They had a little bit of a limited view using auction insights because it only showed auctions where Armani Beauty had overlapping competition. So their search team needed to reveal a bit more of their market landscape to accurately measure, benchmark, and grow the market share. So using share of click data from Athena as a proxy for market share, what their team did is they were able to measure and evaluate the impact of this new bidding approach. And during the peak season from November to December, they modified that bidding strategy for Armani Beauty men's fragrance and optimized shopping ads more for visibility than for ROAS. And I'm going to show you the results of doing that. So what's really cool as a result is Armani Beauty gained market share. They increased their share by 116%. Market share ranking went from 4 to, big reveal, it went from 4 to 2, representing 116% increase in market share. And what was really cool about this is they were able to apply this test to the Armani Beauty men's fragrance, and they ran the same test for their women's fragrance line, and they got the same results. So what they ended up doing and what they're planning to do for all new product launches is using this bidding strategy to increase their overall market share. So that's a pretty cool example. I wanted to share that with you. The last category, or the last thing in this dominating product categories, is around brand infringement, and really paying attention to partners and affiliates from cannibalizing your brand. Excuse me, I want to take a sip of water. I usually ask, are there any questions when I need to take a sip of water when I'm doing it live, but it's not as effective with the webinar, but that's okay. So I wanted to share another real world example. I like bringing in these real world examples. Sage, for those of you that don't know it, more than 1 million British businesses use Sage's award-winning software to manage accounting, finances, payroll, and all that stuff. They have all sorts, as you can imagine, they have all sorts of new rivals entering into their market all the time. And staying on top of their competitive landscape really does require constant monitoring. So what they did is they partnered up with their agency, Neo Media World, and they used Athena's infringement management tool to work with Sage. And what they were able to do with that is capture all brand infringements at scale and hold their partners and their competitors accountable. So when they first turned it on, it was pretty staggering, the results that they got. We were able to identify 89,000 infringements by a single partner alone over a 12-month period. And Sage has since used Athena's data to automatically police brand bidding problems and, when necessary, renegotiate agreements with its partners. And the results have been super impressive. Just in 5 days alone, after enforcing agreements on Athena's monitoring, Sage saw a 75% decrease in cost per click for brand terms and a 33% decrease in partner impression share. So essentially, as you've probably seen this happen, is they were all bidding on each other or bidding against each other, and they were driving up the cost per clicks. And as a result of putting in brand infringements, they were able to have amazing results from that. And you can hear it's just a visual graph of the number of competitors infringing on brand terms. And this is looking at it on a daily basis. And that's a very small graph, and I apologize. But the numbers on the left, 100, 200, 300, 400. So you can see on a daily basis, there's about 400 brand infringements happening, and monitoring this stuff in real time, it is not something a human being can do. So I think that's a really cool story. And the takeaways for this section, really think about using your organic search influence. Always be thinking about optimizing your campaigns based on your business objectives. And then in a lot of these situations, having partners and affiliates that you're working with and working against in some cases, really just having a plan in place to manage those different things is extremely important. Awesome. Okay, cool. Let's go to the next section, section 3. Sorry, I was cheating and reading some of the awesome questions that are coming in. So the last section, last and certainly not least, is adapting new search term opportunities to scale content strategy. So if you start piecing all these things together, it's really important to see all these moving parts as part of a cohesive whole. So one of the things I wanted to show in this slide is an example of embracing those Google automations that I mentioned for a lot of your bidding. In a lot of cases, people are simply setting it and forgetting it and turning it on. And they just give Google the benefit of the doubt that Google's going to optimize the campaign in your favor. And if you think about it for a second and pause and look at the strategic roadmap of, say, Google, they've got something called Google Analytics 4 coming down the pipe. And I've worked with over 250, probably 300 businesses before Athena. I had my own digital marketing agency. And my starting point was always to go into Google Analytics, go into their Google Ads, and see how they had conversions set up. And Google Analytics, it's called goals. And I can tell you out of 300 people, no people set it up the same way. So Google's collecting these conversion signals that are really fuzzy. You can kind of get an idea of what's happening. So Google Analytics 4, one part of that is to clean up all that conversion mess so that they can start optimizing campaigns around conversions. And conversion is only one part of it, right? So conversion leads to an opportunity, and if that opportunity turns into a closed sale, then that's the whole story. And I won't go into my little sidebar about our experience with running a Performance Max campaign around conversions. The long story short is the lead quality was very poor. So let me get back to my slide and not go too far down that rabbit hole. So in cases of automated bidding, if you're more strategic and you're more in a strategic role, and in this day and age in digital marketing, we all have to be strategic and really tie all these things back to business objectives. In this case, you might miss the nuances in your competitive landscape. So this visualization shows a key market in retail, and we wanted to really understand the message in ad copy and if it's actually working. So Athena's models look at click-through rates, click share, and share of spend. And you'll notice the key shift in movement here in this visualization toward free shipping and free returns by this segment, which again is retail. So if you just opted into your campaigns, you'll likely miss if the market is moving and you're not. The bit that I really want to pull in here as well is if you're focused on setting and kind of forgetting it, you're likely to miss something like curbside pickup in this example, which was a key change through the global pandemic and something that all the competition would have in your auction segment ad group. Another example that we've recently seen is the shift in ad copy for some of our customers in the automotive industry. As you know, the global pandemic turned into chip shortages, which has now turned into inventory issues. So we're seeing a lot of our automotive brands and their local retailers use the term inventory now because inventory has been such an issue, and they're starting to get in inventory, and it's really a differentiator for a local dealership to actually have inventory. So it's kind of a novel thing in this day and age, which is kind of funny. Quick sip of water. So I apologize, the slide's a little bit busy, but there's a lot of stuff going on in this slide. And what we're doing is we're looking at thousands and thousands of ad copy data that sits in this particular segment. And we ran this for a retailing brand, and they really wanted to understand the nuances on calls to action. So our artificial intelligence can segment calls to action, sentiment, offers, seasonality, things like that. And then it's automatically bucketed into what's working in the market and what's not. So what you'll see here is the number of impressions naturally gravitate toward language like shop and buy now. And key advertisers made considerable ground on clicks and impressions when they started using phrases like discover, now, find. And while these are pretty simple words, understanding or getting the AI to really spot these patterns, to see where they are doing this, it's incredibly powerful. Some of these advertisers in retail introduced new features like new offers, new discount codes, new outlets, and those sort of things. And the segmentation here is very powerful because it's thousands and thousands of ad copy data being evaluated. And the other thing that really comes to play here are the unique ads that come in. As I mentioned earlier, having an ad sitting on the search results page for, say, 85 days is kind of frightening when you look at your whole relevant market as to how many new ads come in on a daily basis. So it really does bring you up to speed with that as well. So let me go to the next slide. I'm sorry, it's such a long time to change slides. I've got a little bit of a weird setup, but this is just a visualization of those different buckets for the ad copy. It's call to action, incentives, seasonality, and that sort of thing. So it's really interesting to look at that data on a real-time, ongoing basis. This next slide is one of my favorites. I'm a very visual person. So this is something that we created in Tableau. It's fed by our API. So this is something that I just wanted to show you, and you could easily replicate this with your own data or Google Trends into your own dashboards, but it might give you some good food for thought. The green areas here on the visualization are doing quite well from a healthy share of click standpoint. And when you see this overlaid with ad copy and what's responsible for higher conversions, when you look at other ad channels coming into play, things like radio, TV, outdoor, other elements that are running. And what we're doing here is we're ranking all of these by click efficiencies in that relevant market. So you can see like Tampa, Florida, for example, in the bottom right, you can see that clicks are really declining at an alarming rate. This is a total view of market clicks, and we can segment this by search terms as well. So we'll stick to the retail example. We'll use furniture just in this example. So if it's garden furniture, then we can segment and understand at that level that there are other players coming in, perhaps running discounts, offers, free delivery on garden furniture. Dashboards like this are consumed pretty much on a bi-weekly basis. And I would say to really guide entire marketing teams on the local marketing strategy. So it's not just the paid search team, or it's not just the digital marketing team. Advertising works together across all channels. So a visualization tool like this could be extremely powerful and extremely helpful. So I wanted to highlight one more real-world example around Vodafone, and this is kind of a relevant example right now this time of year. So Vodafone used Athena data to optimize results for the launch of a Samsung S22 cell phone. So they combined Athena's strategic insights with Google's smart bidding. And what Vodafone was able to do is they maintained a very flexible bidding strategy that leveraged both manual and automated bidding. And they used Athena's search term opportunities, which is a report that allowed Vodafone to implement 27 keyword terms across their entire business line. And that drove a very high positive increase in revenue. So what they did is they used data around new device launches. So just recently, the iPhone 16 or 14, I just updated the iOS to iOS 16. I think it's the iPhone 14. They just launched a new iPhone. So we're working with AT&T on the iPhone launch. So iPhone and cell phone launches are a very tight 2 to 3 week window. And Vodafone was able to monitor and optimize towards specific click share targets. We helped Vodafone identify 2 competitors who were super slow to respond to this product launch. And they left clicks on the table right up to the day of launch. And Vodafone used manual bidding so that they could bid aggressively on those terms against those competitors and bring in those really high volume clicks. So it was a really cool story about maintaining flexibility with their bidding strategy, bringing in 27 new search term opportunities that they wouldn't have had, and really dominate that specific launch around the Samsung S22 product. So the takeaways and next steps here is a quote from Darwin. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one more responsive to change. It's important to bring in visualizations to actions across your entire advertising team, not just paid search. Again, advertising works together. And then really pay attention to closing the loop from insights to actions to return on investment. And that's really just tying things back, in my opinion, to revenue or to cost savings. So I have now said a lot of words, and I wanted to leave enough time for questions. And I see some questions coming in to the chat. So I'll turn it back over to Cynthia.
Thanks, Gary. I guess now's a good time to take another sip of water.
Yeah, I'll take it.
And our first question is from Melissa. How exactly are you determining a specific term you're the only bidder on if Google Ads doesn't show you that?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Melissa. I appreciate that. And that's kind of going back to that. I know this has nothing to do with Performance Max, but the lack of reporting and lack of insights. So we do have increased reporting in the Google auctions that's beyond Google Ads and beyond auction insights, because we are monitoring. Basically, we have 30 sites around the globe where we're able to get visibility into the competitive landscape. And that's kind of not the bread and butter of Athena, but really just going beyond Google to provide our customers insights, strategic insights that they wouldn't be able to get through Google alone. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gary. From Mitch, any tips for optimizing or getting results from non-brand campaigns? We're trying to mitigate or migrate spend from our branded campaigns, but our non-brand doesn't do as well because we have more competitors.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a very nuanced question. And we have several examples of customers, and our customers are doing the exact same thing. So they're looking at these Lone Rangers, they're turning them off, they're getting cost savings, and then they're reallocating them over to generic terms. And I think just looking at a search term opportunity tool that can provide those high converting terms would be a starting point. That's a pretty detailed conversation and has a lot to do with the specifics of your specific situation. So I think following up with Athena and speaking to someone who is more in the weeds with the campaign than I am would be very helpful to you to get that answer.
Excellent. Thanks, Gary. Another question from, I believe it's Mitch. Do you happen to know how to set up a feed-only Performance Max campaign? I see people talking about it, but when I try to set one up, it says I'm missing assets.
The short answer to that question is no, I don't. That's a very specific question. And we do have people who are in Google Ads on a daily basis who would be able to help you more than I would about the specifics. I assume when you're saying feeds, product listing ads, inventory feeds, yeah, I think the best thing to do is to follow up with someone who has a little bit more specific daily knowledge around that question. Sorry, I keep dodging the question.
Yeah, no, you're not dodging at all. I think this is a great opportunity for you to provide some follow-up after you and the team have thought through. Another question for you from Sylvia, playing devil's advocate around brand activator. You mentioned cutting ad spend when you dominate search engine results or SERP. What are your thoughts around increasing your ad spend to squash new competitors that may be bidding on brand search terms?
Squash competitors. I love it. And that's a takeaway really from Lone Rangers. In the Lone Ranger report, it was all manually done. And then with Brand Activator, we're literally limited by the script going into Google and updating the Google Ads campaign to every hour. So we're able to monitor that when you do have new competitors coming in, maybe bidding on your brand term. And in those situations, you could make the choice to bid up and try to win that specific auction. But as you all know, CPC is not the only factor that comes into play in winning the auction. But then Brand Activator is also going to notify you when there are no competitors bidding on specific brand terms. And it will allow you to not bid on those brand terms so that you won't have wasted clicks on those specific search terms. So yeah, great question.
All right, another question. If we stop ads on branded search terms, will Athena also alert us if new competitors begin advertising on our search engine result pages?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. With Brand Activator, we'll send you a notification. You'll get a notification in not real time, every hour in the dashboard, and you'll be able to see all the activity that's happening in your Google Ads account when specific keywords are added to your negative keyword list and when they were removed, and you'll have full transparency in that activity.
Right,
Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Gary. It looks like we are at the conclusion of today's webinar. So I want to thank you again for this engaging presentation and your case study examples. It's really great for our audience. And I want to thank our audience for attending today's webinar. And if we didn't get to your question or your comment, we will be sure to pass it along to Athena. So thanks again, Gary, and thanks again to all of you for joining us, and we hope you join us again soon.
Yep, thank you.